Two Detroit officers, late and full of swagger, sauntered into her courtroom. They were ready to play power games, but they didn't know they were walking into Judge Clarissa Benton's domain. She was about to show them what real authority sounds like when it doesn't need to shout. Detroit's 36th District Courthouse on Gresham Avenue is a place that feels stuck in time. Fluorescent lights flicker over scuffed floors, and the air smells of old coffee and copier toner. It's a place Clarissa Benton had known since the 90s, when she was a young lawyer fresh out of Wayne State. A judge once told her, "You've got to be twice as good to get half as far." She'd smiled, but the words had stuck. On this particular Thursday, a cold, drizzly morning in late April, she arrived early as usual. Robe draped over her arm, briefcase in one hand, and a half-burnt Perry's Deli coffee in the other. Her only confidant in this courthouse was Janelle Ruiz, the bailiff. "Morning, Judge," Janelle greeted her. "Morning, Ruiz. The Taylor arraignment is first, right?" Clarissa asked. "Yep. Defendant's here. Prosecution's late. And the two primary officers are still a no-show." Clarissa sighed, sliding into her robe. "Of course they are. It was supposed to be a simple day with just 3 cases. A minor weapons charge, an illegal search motion, and the Taylor arraignment, which involved resisting arrest." Clarissa always paid extra attention to resisting arrest cases. They were often vague and messy, sometimes a coded way to target people who looked like her own nephew. At 9 o'clock she tapped the gavel. "Court is now in session." Taylor, the defendant, sat with his public defender, a kid who looked barely 22 with wide, bruised eyes. Clarissa noticed the swelling immediately. When the AD rushed in, flustered and apologizing, Clarissa noted it but said nothing. But where were the officers? Their absence wasn't just late. It was a deliberate show of disrespect. At 9:07 the courtroom door swung open. 2 officers strolled in, Sergeant Tom Redding leading the way with a seasoned swagger, followed by Officer Mike Halpern, who was nonchalantly chewing gum. They didn't acknowledge the judge or apologize. "Gentlemen," Clarissa's voice cut through the air, "you were due at 9. Redding shrugged. "Traffic. You're testifying in a felony arraignment. That requires punctuality." "Sure thing, ma'am." Clarissa's eyes met Janelle's. The bailiff looked down. "Ma'am." "Not your honor, not even judge." The deliberate disrespect was noted. She leaned forward slightly. "Let the record show that Sergeant Redding and Officer Halpern have arrived 7 minutes late. This court expects all parties to address the bench with the proper title. Please make note of that moving forward." Redding offered a tight smile. Halpern just kept chewing. Clarissa was used to these small digs. The microaggressions meant to signal that a black woman with a gavel was still just a ma'am to them. But today, with Taylor's bruised face in plain sight, it hit differently. Still, she kept her voice calm. "Let's proceed." Clarissa turned to the officers for their account after the ADA finished her statement. Halpern remained slouched against the wall, his uniform sharp but his demeanor sloppy. Redding stepped forward, his voice a clipped monotone. "Suspect was loitering outside the Marathon on Jefferson. Refused to show ID, got mouthy, then resisted arrest. We followed procedure, used minimal force." Clarissa tilted her head. "He was doing what exactly?" "Just standing there, Your Honor," Redding said. "Standing outside a gas station on a public sidewalk?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied, drawing out the word, a clear provocation. She didn't flinch. Instead she flipped through the file. "The report states Mr. Taylor was waiting for a rideshare. Is that correct?" Redding hesitated. "Maybe. Your report says he failed to comply after you told him to vacate the premises. Was there a complaint from the store owner?" "No, ma'am. It was a patrol check. We're encouraged to keep the area clear." "High theft spot." Clarissa looked over her glasses. "So you saw a young man standing alone and decided he looked suspicious. Is that your protocol?" Redding avoided her gaze. "Protocol, Your Honor. This court will require body camera footage before this arraignment can proceed," she stated, her voice firm. "I'm ordering it to be submitted within 48 hours. No footage, no case." Redding's face hardened. He muttered under his breath, "This is what happens when they let activists wear robes." A low gasp rippled through the courtroom. Clarissa didn't react immediately. She pressed a button under her desk. "Bailiff, clear the gallery." Within a minute it was just her, Janelle, and the 2 officers. Clarissa took off her glasses, folded them slowly and stood. All 5 feet 4 inches of her commanded the silence. You two have come into my courtroom late, disregarded the rules of decorum, and now one of you has made a derogatory statement that is both personal and inappropriate. Halpern rolled his eyes. Jesus, can we not? Clarissa cut him off. Officer Halpern, I suggest you remain silent unless spoken to directly. She turned back to Redding. I have spent 23 years earning the right to wear this robe. You don't have to like me, but when you walk into this courtroom, you will respect this bench, this court, and me. And if you can't handle that, I suggest you find another job. The room was dead silent. Even Halpern had stopped chewing. Clarissa sat back down, put on her glasses and pressed the intercom. Let the parties return. The energy had completely shifted. Everyone looked at her differently now, with a quiet sense of awe. The tension didn't disappear. It just went underground. Clarissa called the next case. State of Michigan versus Shauna Hill. A young black woman, cuffed and exhausted, was brought to the defendant's table for misdemeanor shoplifting. The item value was under $20. One of the officers who had detained her was Halpern. Miss Hill, are you currently employed? Clarissa asked. Yes, Your Honor. I work at a food prep center. Halpern leaned forward to interrupt. She was stuffing. You'll speak when asked, officer, Clarissa said without looking at him. The public defender requested pretrial diversion, citing no priors and the fact that her client was a caretaker who had panicked when her EBT card was declined. Clarissa reviewed the file. Officer Halpern, was body cam footage reviewed and submitted with this report? No, ma'am. Sorry, Your Honor. And yet you listed yourself as the sole witness with no corroboration or footage? Halpern didn't answer. Request for diversion is granted, Clarissa announced. Miss Hill, you'll attend 1 day of community mediation. Case dismissed upon completion. Miss Hill's eyes filled with tears. That's it, she whispered. Clarissa nodded. That's it. Later that afternoon in her chambers, Clarissa sat with a cold coffee. She heard the faint echo of Redding's voice from the hallway. I'm telling you, this one's just waiting for someone to call her Your Majesty, so she can lose it. Clarissa just sat there breathing in the weight of it all. But what they didn't realize was that every slight was only making her next move more precise. Friday morning, Clarissa arrived at the courthouse early, her mind replaying Redding's smug smirk. She wasn't thinking about her schedule. She was thinking about the calculation behind their disrespect. Her clerk, Leland, was at his desk. Morning, Judge. Anything I need to see before we open? Leland handed her an email from a civil rights attorney named Alicia Vaughn. The subject line read, Body cam clip, Taylor arrest. Clarissa clicked the link. The grainy footage was clear enough. It showed Taylor checking his phone, not loitering. Redding's voice was loud. Let me see your ID. Halpern grabbed him without warning. Taylor never resisted. Clarissa saw the excessive force, the targeted action, the lie. At 9 o'clock, court was back in session. Taylor's arraignment was on the docket for a suppression hearing. Redding and Halpern were seated behind the prosecution table, Halpern still looking relaxed. Clarissa tapped her gavel. Before we proceed, this court has received new evidence related to the arrest of Mr. Taylor. Body cam footage that was not submitted has surfaced. It significantly contradicts the officer's testimony. Redding's brow furrowed. In the interest of transparency, Clarissa continued, I have referred this footage to the district attorney and the Internal Review Board. Furthermore, this court is placing the arraignment on hold and will schedule a full evidentiary hearing. Mr. Taylor is hereby released on his own recognizance. Taylor looked at his lawyer in shock. Clarissa turned to Redding. Sergeant, do you have anything to say regarding the omission of this footage? Redding's jaw clenched. No, Your Honor. I didn't think so. When court recessed, Janelle whispered, they're pissed. I know, Clarissa replied. Let them be. Her phone buzzed. A text from Leland. Alicia just called. Local news picked up the video. It's on Channel 4. Clarissa stood still in the hallway, a quiet resolve settling over her. This was only the beginning. Now the public would see what she had seen, and the pressure wouldn't just be on Redding. It would come for her too. By early afternoon, the courtroom felt heavier. The body cam video was now viral, and her court had become the center of a citywide conversation. The tension was palpable. Before she could begin the next case, Redding stood uninvited, hat in hand. "Your Honor, if I may?" "You may speak, Sergeant." Briefly. He was uncomfortable trying to get ahead of the narrative. "I just wanted to clarify something. We weren't aware the footage hadn't uploaded. There are tech issues sometimes." Clarissa raised her hand. "Thank you, Sergeant. That's all." She turned to her clerk, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let the record reflect that Sergeant Redding is not assigned to this matter and was not invited to speak." Redding's face flushed as he sat down. The bond hearings and petty thefts that followed were handled swiftly, but Halpern's testimony in one of them was shaky. His confidence was gone. He fumbled dates and made vague claims. Clarissa cut him off. "Officer Halpern, this is sworn testimony. If you are unsure, say you're unsure. Guesswork doesn't belong in a courtroom." Halpern swallowed and managed a faint, "Yes, Your Honor." The victory felt hollow. That evening as she left, she saw her reflection in the elevator doors. She looked tired, not broken, just worn from the constant performance of being impeccable. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tamika, an old law school friend. "Saw the clip. Handled that with more grace than I would have. Proud of you." Later, in her chambers, her friend Alicia Vaughn appeared. "I'm not here as an attorney," she said, "just a friend." "That makes one of us," Clarissa replied. Alicia explained that her reaction was being clipped and shared widely. "You took this job to do what others wouldn't, and now everyone's watching what you'll do next." The next morning, a crowd gathered on the courthouse steps. They weren't protesters, just local people watching her walk in. Her face was on news thumbnails with headlines like, "Detroit Judge Silences Cops." The phones in her chambers rang constantly with calls from journalists, community leaders, and even a former mayor's aide. She ignored most of it. At 9 o'clock she entered the courtroom and the entire gallery stood. She didn't acknowledge it, she simply sat, adjusted her robe and tapped the gavel. "Good morning. Court is now in session." She presided over a juvenile case, a non-violent robbery. She listened to the victim and the defendant, a 17-year-old who stole a phone for grocery money. The prosecutor wanted detention. Clarissa opted for mercy. "Don't mistake this courtroom for forgiveness," she told him. "This is an opportunity. If you walk back through that door again, I won't hesitate to lock it behind you." Later, a deputy from Internal Affairs handed her a sealed envelope. An inquiry into Redding and Halpern's conduct had been launched. Councilwoman Bernice Greer, who had been observing from the back, approached the bench. "Some of us on the council are prepared to hold the department accountable. I hope you'll stay vocal." "I'm just doing my job," Clarissa replied. "That's how real change starts." But the real battle wasn't just inside the courtroom. It was about how long the outside world would care. And how far she'd be willing to go. Clarissa stayed in her chambers that night, the silence a heavy companion. She read the inquiry documents, a stiff, formal language that seemed to strip the humanity from the events. She'd seen these before and they usually led nowhere. But this one had her name in it as a witness. Her phone buzzed. The department had issued a neutral boilerplate statement. A PR bandage. Then a call from Judge Alan Crenshaw, a retired mentor. "They're waiting for you to mess up," he said. An eye roll, a too long pause. "That's all they need." "I know," she replied. "Then keep your robe ironed and your voice cool." She sat at her desk, pulling out a photo of her father, a bus mechanic who had taught her a profound lesson. "You ain't got to scream to speak loud, baby." She started writing on a legal pad, a letter to herself. "You are not on trial, but you are being watched. Speak with precision, move with purpose. You answer to the law and the people who still believe in it." A knock came at the door. It was Ruiz, holding a printed screenshot. It was a quote from Clarissa's transcript, now viral on a national news site. "Respect the bench not because I demand it, but because the people expect it." Ruiz said, "They're starting to quote you." Clarissa simply nodded. "I guess I better make every word count." By Monday morning, the Police Benevolent Association had released a statement calling her courtroom a hostile environment. An anonymous blog post from inside the department accused her of having a personal agenda. Clarissa read it all, then put on her suit, her mother's gold pin, and walked into the courthouse. The stares were harder now, daring her to respond. She didn't bite. Ruiz brought her a file. "They're filing a complaint," she said. It was signed by Redding, Halpern, and a Captain Bow, a political player who never took risks without seeing an advantage. "So it's official now," Clarissa said. "They're trying to take your legs out from under you." Clarissa leaned back. "Let them try." The news broke. The headlines were careful, but the message was clear. Detroit judge accused of bias against officers. A press conference was scheduled. Captain Bow would speak. This wasn't about procedure. It was about power. Clarissa knew they were hoping she would respond emotionally, hoping she'd swing wild, so they could call her unprofessional. She refused. The pressure came to a head on Wednesday. Her phone buzzed with 3 messages from Alicia Vaughn. "Media is spiraling. You need to speak." "I don't want to turn this into theater," Clarissa replied. "It already is," Alicia said. "You just haven't stepped on the stage." Ruiz set up a small camera. Clarissa, in her blazer, spoke without a script. "I wasn't elected to be liked. I was elected to apply the law with consistency and fairness. The footage everyone saw wasn't a gotcha. It was evidence, plain and simple. And when evidence contradicts testimony, it is my duty to act." She ended the video with a simple phrase: "Dignity doesn't require volume, just principle." The video went viral. People were dissecting her words, quoting her discipline. Even national figures began commenting. The next morning, a chief judge stopped her in the hall. "I saw your video," he said. "You said what needed to be said. I'm not here to make enemies." "No," he replied. "You're here to remind us we still have a backbone." And so the story was no longer theirs to control. It was hers. By the following Monday, the headlines had moved on. But in the courthouse, the consequences lingered. The complaint against her was quietly dismissed. The Judicial Conduct Commission found no evidence of bias. Redding was reassigned to desk duty. Halpern took a leave of absence. Captain Bow was told by City Council to reconsider his public commentary. Taylor's charges were dropped. His attorney, with Alicia Vaughn's help, was filing a civil complaint. Taylor's name appeared one last time on an expungement review. His record would be sealed. That Friday, Ruiz brought her lilies. "You've been standing all month," she said. "Figured you deserved something that says you're still upright." Clarissa smiled. "Don't jinx it." Later that afternoon, she visited the juvenile court wing to speak to a group of high school students. "No matter how loud a room is," she told them, "people always notice who stays calm. And when you're calm and right, that's what scares people the most." A girl asked, "Do you ever get scared?" "Every single week," Clarissa answered. "But scared doesn't mean unqualified. It means you care enough to know what could go wrong and you're strong enough to show up anyway." One student asked her to sign his notes. Under her signature she wrote, "Hold your ground even when no one claps." She returned to her chambers, a sense of purpose renewed. The cameras were gone. The crowds were gone. But she was still there. Not to prove something, but because some jobs aren't finished when the headlines fade. They're finished when the next person who takes that bench doesn't have to fight so hard just to be heard. If this story moved you, share it. Talk about it. And most of all, remember, respect isn't requested. It's earned.